So what are the 2 steps to becoming more self-confident? I'll tell you, because this isn't clickbait. Number 1 is find a philosophy, adopt a philosophy that will define your purpose and mission. And number 2, learn to apply that philosophy in every part of your life. Now that's pretty easily said and probably needs a bit of unpacking, which is what I want to use the rest of this video to do, to just share with you the story from which these 2 lessons come, and just to explain in a bit more detail how these two steps actually work. The stories of a character named Jacob, the third of the forefathers, who, the way the Torah describes, could lead us to understand that in his earlier part of life was a fairly cunning, somewhat cheeky, not in a lovable way, but more in a sneaky way, character that seems to cheat his older brother, his older twin brother, out of the birthright blessing. Now, he doesn't cheat as in steal it, but he does con him into selling it to him for a price that it's just not worth. And at the end of the day, Jacob gets the birthright blessing from their ailing father. So what happens is, when Esau realizes how he's been cheated out of actually what is an incredible blessing, he turns on his brother, and their mum says, Jacob, your brother's going to kill you. Run away. And that's what he does. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't fight his brother. He doesn't say, hey, you sold it to me fair and square. You made poor choices. That's not my problem. He runs away in the dead of night, not knowing if he'll ever come back. He's this weak character whose name itself references his inferiority complex, because his name is Jacob, Yaakov. And the root of the word Yaakov is heel. Now that could be a name of humility, the heel being a lower part of the body, but actually in Jacob's case, it was an inferiority complex. He was always holding on to his brother. He held on to his brother's heel when his brother came out of their mum. He was always defining himself according to his brother, and he never was able to find his own identity. But what's interesting is that when the Torah tells us that he arrived in Aram, which would be the town that he would eventually make his way to after fleeing the family home, a very different Jacob shows up. He rocks up and he heads straight to the well, and he sees a whole group of shepherds who seem to have clocked off earlier than they should have, waiting around the well so that they can water their sheep. He sees this beautiful girl and falls in love with her. And the following happens. Over the face of the well, over the mouth of the well, is this massive rock. And he says to the farmers, what's going on here? Why are you all bludging? Why aren't you at work? What's this hanging around the watering hole instead of watering your sheep and going back to the pastures? And so they explain that they're unionized. No, they actually didn't say that. They explained that there's this massive rock and it's very hard to roll it off, and they all have to put their effort in, so they finish early so that they can water their sheep. And Jacob says, that's a load of rubbish. And he walks up to the rock, which normally would have taken a few people to roll off the face of the well, and he single-handedly moves it. This is an act of strength. You would think someone with such strength could defend himself from an angry brother. When he sees the beautiful girl, who we later discover is Rachel, his future wife, he says, you're the most beautiful thing in the world. You've got such an aura. You've got such a vibe about you. There's something magical about your soul. Suddenly he's got this incredible foresight and insight, and he says, I want to marry you. And he gives her a big kiss on the lips, which from the Torah description she seems to quite enjoy. But where did that courage come from, to just propose to a woman without courting her, without being an arranged marriage or anything like that as it was in those days? To just confidently walk up to the girl at the bar and say, hello, sweetheart, and then to have enough charm that she's willing to meet him? And then when Rachel says, by the way, you're a sweet guy, I really am impressed by you, and I too would like to marry you, but my dad is never going to approve of this. My dad is a swindler. He's a crook. He is the #1 mafia man in this town. You're never going to be able to just marry me without getting through him, my brothers, them probably raping you, taking everything that you have, and then you probably having to pay a fortune. And even then, I doubt you'll end up marrying me. It's not going to work. And you know what he says to her? I'm your father's brother. I'm your father's brother. That's his response to when she describes that her father is the biggest crook in town. And what the commentaries say is that what he was saying is, I am, because actually Jacob was a cousin, not the father's brother. Jacob says, trust me, sweetheart, I also was a crook. I also have the capacity to lie and cheat. And while that's not me anymore, if I have to, I will beat him at his own game for the sake of our marriage. Whoa! That's not the guy that ran away. What happened to turn Jacob from being a fearful, conniving, weak sort of character into this really proud, strong, courageous individual who, as we keep reading over the course of the next years of his life, goes on to build a fantastic fortune and runs as honest a business as you're ever going to get? What happened? So I'm going to actually take you back, and I'm going to take you to the middle of the story, a part that I haven't shared with you, which is where we discover the 2 steps. When he fled the home on his mother's advice, he set out on his journey. And he had planned to cover a certain amount of distance each day. And somehow he had miscalculated what time the sun was going to set. Or he had calculated correctly, but the sun miraculously set earlier. Read the Torah narrative of Vayetze to get a better understanding. And he's suddenly caught in the dark on a hill, and he can't keep traveling. He needs to stop for the night, needs to rest. And so what he does is he gathers a few stones and he lies down and he goes to sleep. And in that sleep, he has a dream in where he sees a ladder, and there are angels on the ladder traveling upwards and downwards. And there are so many commentaries and so many paintings of this dream, on this dream and of this dream. And I want to focus on one particular commentary, because it picks up on the fact that he has this dream, he wakes up, and he says, whoa! This is a pretty full-on place. I'm having visions of angels, and God speaks to me about my destiny and my future and what's going to happen. This is magical. I can't sleep here. This is a sacred space. And then a few verses later, we're told, and he woke up early in the morning. He's gone back to sleep. Well, if you just said it's a holy place, what are you going back to sleep? And so the commentaries say when he went back to sleep, he was not going to sleep to rest. He was moving into a deep meditative state in order to be able to further access the energy of this space. Jacob calls the place Bethel, the place, the house of God. He realizes that this is the space where Isaac was almost sacrificed by his father Abraham. This is the place that the temple is one day going to be built in Jerusalem. This is the place in which there is a presence of Hashem very much integrated into the earth, very much integrated with the nature of the surroundings. And he says, I've completely misunderstood reality. See, I always thought, says Jacob, that reality was a world created by God. And God, the infinite, controls everything, created everything, but not integrated with everything. I have just come to the realization that not only is God in control, but God is everything. This place is sacred. If this place is sacred, then every blade of grass is sacred. Every tree in this place is sacred. I'm sacred. The infinite is actually in everything. The creator of everything, surrounding everything, and fully integrated with everything. Everything is a part of Hashem. Which means that I have just discovered my consciousness. I've discovered an awareness of this fact. And that I need to share this with others. It's not just to teach people about the God, the creator, but to help others discover the soul and the spiritual significance of everything. Hashem is everywhere and involved in everything. He becomes inspired. And he actually adopts this as a philosophy. I am not a product of my parents. I am not a man on the run. I am a person who is being placed in one situation after another in order to discover the spirituality, the meaning, and most of all, the value of everyone, everything in that moment and place. That's the transformation. That's what happened on that mountain. Then, instead of heading straight to Aram, which is where his final destination is, he makes a pit stop. And he stops in a place called the seminary or the monastery of Shem and Aver. This is a place of monotheistic study, of meditation, of what is the precursor of Jewish spirituality. And he spends 14 years studying, almost as a monk, embodying, discovering what it is that he had on the mountain, and more importantly, how to apply it in his life. And then when he arrives in Aram, he is a different person. He's gone through this tremendous transformation. See, here's the guy that if you met 50 years after you went to school with him, you'd be like, in school, yeah, wasn't a nice guy. And then you meet him 50 years on, and he's this unbelievably caring, generous, inspiring character. It's like, what happened? So Jacob did two things. Number one, he adopted a philosophy. He adopted a philosophy that everything is a part of Hashem, that everything has a soul, and that the purpose of life is to discover that. Now, how did that give him confidence? Well, think about it for a second. Often, we lack confidence because we're unsure what we're meant to do, who we're meant to be, and whether what we're doing or who we're being is actually correct. But if you have absolute certainty that you are a partner of Hashem, that you are in service of Hashem, that Hashem has placed you here, that the whole infinite is with you, watching you, empowering you, barracking for you, that's Australian for cheering for you in this moment. If that is what it is, then that's as empowering as it's going to get. Just think about it. Every board meeting, every engagement with your supermarket checkout chick, every time you engage someone, every time you go for a walk and you pound the footpath and you pass that tree, each one of those things, people, places, has a soul. And Hashem has placed you in that moment to discover it, to look at the tree and discover the soul of the tree, to look at that person and discover that they've got a soul, and then to take it to the next step, which is to share with others and share with them their value. Tell them how valuable they are. Bless the tree. Give thanks for the food. Realize how significant it is. And live with this consciousness, which is what step 2 is. Just keep applying it. Keep applying it. Because when you have a mission, when you know who you are and why you're here, it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter, because you've become the confident person that others are going to gravitate towards. So the 2 steps are, adopt the philosophy. And yes, I am proposing adopt the Torah philosophy, the spirituality that Jacob adopted. And number 2, learn to apply it. Now, interestingly, he had the inspiration in one night, but he learned to apply it over 14 years. And that's the truth. We'll read a book, read a text that will take you a day, a month, a year. And then we've got the rest of our life to keep applying it, keep applying it, keep applying it. And as we keep doing that, we will become, and you will become, more and more confident in who you are and what you are. You'll become less influenced by your fears, less concerned about what you're not, and more consumed by what you can achieve by the fact that you know who you are.